In 2020, I was diagnosed for the third time with squamous cell carcinoma in my cheek, in my buccal mucosa, in my left cheek right here, somewhere in here. And I had two previous surgeries in 2017, which was epithelial dysplasia, which is a precancer. And they did a pretty big surgery to use my buccal fat pad, flipped it around, and I thought, I had no other treatment other than the surgery, but it was pretty rough for a couple months. And I recovered from that. And that kept the doctors, pretty much me married to them. I would go back every 3 months, and they were checking me out. And 2 years later, I had a recurrence. So they saw something they didn't like, and they took a biopsy again, and same exact thing, same exact area on the edge of the original surgery, epithelial dysplasia, severe grade, same as before. Second surgery, 2 years later, went in. The doctor was able to manipulate the buccal fat pad and basically reuse it, which was surprising. And I went to the same surgery, same hell, recovered from that. And again, they watched me. And 2020, about a year ago, back in February, right when COVID was sort of coming into the United States, they saw something again, and they biopsied it. And this time I got a call, and it was full-blown cancer. It had invaded the epithelial layers. And, obviously I was shocked because this was the third time. And my doctor said, "Don't worry, we have a plan." I didn't know what that meant. And it turns out that my surgery and this plan were delayed for about 4 or 5 months because of COVID, and the hospitals were overrun by people who were life or limb, who needed respirators, and there was just no room for me to get a surgery. But I called in desperation about 4 months because I couldn't open my mouth. It had shut down. The cancer, I knew something was getting bad, and it was bleeding. I never had bleeding before, and I didn't know what was going on, and I was panicking. And they said, "Hey, you're on a top priority. We're going to have you come in." So in May 22nd, 2020, I went in for this pretty big surgery where sorry for the terrible lighting. They sliced my whole neck open from here to here. So I have basically a large cut in my neck, and they peeled my face open, and they ablated the entire inside of my cheek, and removed 3 molars. And they did a microvascular reconstruction using my left forearm. So like other people, I have a pretty big scar on my wrist. I'm sorry about the terrible use of camera. But anyway, so this scar, let me see if I can show you that. It's healed up pretty nicely, considering how, I'll show some pictures. Anyway, so they took out an artery, connected that to my neck, and then basically kept that tissue alive. And I was in a 16-hour operation where my wife, my family couldn't even visit me. And then I was in the ICU for 8 days, recovering with a full tracheotomy. So I had a trach. I had this large incision in my neck that took out 49 lymph nodes out of the left side of my neck. Like I said, the 3 molars plus the entire tissue around my inside of the maxilla. They also shaved the maxilla, the bone. So the maxilla is above, and the mandible is down here, I think. So they took out some bone, and so I was in rough shape. I look like I was swollen out to here, and I'll show you some videos and pictures. But so fast forward, then 7 weeks later, I was recovering from that surgery, plus a skin graft from my thigh to replace the tissue on my wrist. So I have a scar on my thigh as well. And then they told me, "Hey, Jay, we think we have to do some further treatment for you, and we believe that you're a candidate for radiation." And so I said, "Okay, what does that mean?" I didn't quite know. So, I said, "Okay, we're going to go into this radiation thing." Then they brought me into the hospital and said, "Oh, and we also want to give you chemotherapy." So, I tried to do as much research as I could, try to understand why I needed these treatments because, I felt like they had clean margins, and, I'm a fairly young guy. I was 44 at the time. And, what could this all, why did I need this? And then they said basically because I had these two previous occurrences, that they just wanted to give me every possible measure to prevent it from ever coming back. So I got mm, basically 7 weeks of radiation chemo. Um, and I said, all right, let's do whatever it takes for this never to come back. So I went into that, and it turns out they wanted to give me cisplatin. Cisplatin is probably what many of you have taken. That's a single agent of chemo. It's what really can cause, it's what they get from people with breast cancer or testicular cancer, a lot of other cancers. It's kind of uh, the workhorse of most chemos, but it's single agent. There's a lot of other agents that can put in, but it turns out it can also give you uh, something called neurosis, or basically you lose the feeling in your fingertips where you can't pick up like a dime off your table or paper, or can't button your shirt. And so it can also cause hearing loss. But when I heard hearing loss, that made my alarms go up, because I already had 2 previous surgeries in my ears. I had exostosis removed, which is a bone growth from basically surfing cold water and some other natural limitations in my ears. And I already had some hearing loss in one ear. So they did a search on my records and came back and said, yeah, you're not a candidate for cisplatin, but we have this other agent called carboplatin. And some of you may have carboplatin. And carboplatin, as it was defined to me by my doctor in his eloquent terms, is the Diet Coke of chemotherapy, meaning it's less powerful, it's less aggressive, but it's effective at 80% of cisplatin. And I thought 80% good enough for me to keep my hearing. That was another saga for me. And so they gave me this carboplatin, and in addition to the radiation. So they started me on the treatment. I remember going in for the fitting, the mask, that whole nonsense with, getting the mask melted to your face to conform to your individual anatomy. And then coincidentally, on my way home from that appointment, I was in my car on the highway in traffic, and some guy hit me doing about 70 miles an hour, full on from the side. I guess he fell asleep at the wheel. So I ended up back in the hospital. Short story, but and I had all these scarring, and I was very swollen already. So the paramedics were freaking out. They thought it was all from this accident, or I didn't know what was going on. But I actually did get hurt, but anyway, so past that, then I start my radiation treatment. The radiation treatment, I got 66 G. All right, 66 G. This is important. How much radiation you actually get, even though it's targeted, really matters. Some people will get 72. Some people will get 44. But kind of the 60 and above is usually the average. And it depends on how many days you go. So for me, it was going to be 30 days of treatment. And if you divide 66 by 30, you get 2.2 per session. So I had 2.2 G per session. It's a fairly high dose. And they spread that over 5 days a week for 7 weeks. So they started me on carboplatin. I lasted 4 treatments. So 4 weeks with carboplatin. And I developed, my body just completely rejected it. I was like melting. My face was redder than it was supposed to be. My body was red. I was heating up. It was a nightmare at about week 4 for me. I thought there's no way I can finish this, and I really couldn't. And they looked at me and they said, yeah, this is not working for you. So they took me off carboplatin, but they said, you have to find a way to finish the radiation, because it's more important. The carboplatin, the chemo, is really just an amplifier. It just amplifies the effects of the targeted radiation right into the area where the tumor was. So I said, okay. So I fought through it. I really dug down deep, and it was, I'll show some pictures, but completely melting the side of my face, and the pain was unreal. Lost my sense of taste, lost my sense of appetite, and it just really went down fast. When I finished that treatment, that's when things actually got worse. So the surgery was incredibly horrific, and then the treatment was damn near impossible to endure. And I know you guys have all done that. And then I got this infection. What happened was, The surgery, the reconstruction, one of the stitches came loose. I remember this on the first day when they said, oh, they were looking at my mouth. One of my main doctors, like, "Look, stitch came loose." And I didn't know what that meant. But what it meant is that it created a fistula. It created a hole from my mouth to my sinus. So basically, it didn't close. They said, don't worry, that'll heal on its own. We'll just give it some time. So with that 7 weeks of healing time before I started the radiation chemo, um, I, I felt like it was healed because I was drinking water and it was like not coming out my nose, or liquids were not coming out my nose, because that's what happens. So I went into the treatment, and what happened is the radiation basically blasted it right open. Just the tissue that, that was, being radiated was mostly the reconstructed tissue, and it just all came apart. So even to this day, um, I'm a year from the surgery and probably 10 months from the end of the radiation treatment. I still have a fistula in my voice. If we can try this later, but I have an obturator in my mouth right now, and I'll show you what the obturator looks like. It's basically a prosthesis that's blocking that hole so that when I drink or eat, it doesn't go into my sinus as much. It does a little bit, which means I have to constantly clear using the nasal rinse. Maybe some of you have this, but it's like a nasal rinse that really can flush you out, and that helps me a lot by preventing more infections. That infection that I got about 2 months after the end of my treatment put me back in the hospital for 5 days. I was re-hospitalized with another surgery because they didn't know what was going on. My PET scan lit up like a Christmas tree. It was all inflamed and just completely rotted, and just they didn't know what was going on with me. I was in pure hell. The pain was unbelievable. Literally, I'm a pretty I've always been an athlete, and I have a pretty high tolerance of pain, I would say. And this put me on the floor of my kitchen in tears, and I thought I was dying. I thought I was dying. I thought it was the end. So I've been there. I know how people are going through, um, and no amount of doctor's appointments week after week, they were not giving me answers. And I was so frustrated. I finally brought my mom, my poor mom, I brought her, and I said, you got to speak for me. I just don't know what to do. And she said, look at him, look at this guy. You got to do something. And finally, they admitted me and took another CT scan. And they said, yeah, something was definitely wrong. And so what they wanted to do was keep me in the hospital and do a biopsy, meaning go up into my sinus, knock me out in general anesthesia again, and go and take a biopsy, take some tissue out of there, and then put it under a microscope and do a pathology report. And that's exactly what they did. And thank God, because they found a severe case of candida. Candida is we all have candida in our mouth, but we have very bad candida. And this one was really bad. It was actually penetrating like deep into my throat, like in areas into my temple, into my brain. It was going in places where it's like really bad news. And they put me on this very high dose of anti bacteria, basically IV injected, because they give you this I think they call it broad spectrum. Basically, broad spectrum means we don't know what the hell it is, so we're just going to give you every antibody under the planet, and hopefully one of them will work until we figure out precisely what type of bacteria it is. So they had me on this, and then they figured out what precisely it was. It was actually 2 different kinds, and then they put me on this very targeted antibacteria medicine, first via IV and then in pill form, so I can go home from the hospital. And that drug cost $5,000. Actually, it was almost $6,000 a week. $6,000 a week. Now, thank God I have some good insurance, but I still had to pay a lot. And I thought, this is not sustainable. How long do I need to be on this? Well, some really great, smart doctors out in Denver, Colorado, under a lab, worked on it even further and figured out another medicine that would help me. That was like $10 a week. So they put me on that for like 2 months. And my head, which was like a balloon, your temple is supposed to have a dip. So if you feel your temple, it should be a dip. Mine was like bulging out on the side, just like bulgy, like a ball. And I'll show some pictures of that too. And if I was more prepared, I would have had a nice, awesome video right now to show you some kind of like me now. Some other things to consider. So the radiation took all my hair and completely zapped it off on one side of my head. So I'll show some before and after. thankfully, it all grew back. Voila. So actually, I'm pretty happy with that. Um, now that I'm 45 years old, I mean, happy to get something. But that was annoying. So the whole back of my head was like bald. So I ended up shaving my head just to kind of even it out. Um, and nutrition, I couldn't eat for months. I literally lived off of I often talk about this on the group. I'll use this quick mass, and the quick mass I found from somebody else who recommended, who said it saved them, and it saved me. It tastes good. It's a milk based protein. uh I can even show you the bottle. And that's all. I was living off that. I was living off that and Ensure, and also I was living off because I had that feeding tube after surgery, and I had to feed myself for 31 days. I couldn't eat or drink. I had to use it was a nasal. It wasn't a so it was nasal. So I was basically pumping it through my nasal into my stomach. And these things called bolus. They're high protein, kind of a meal and a shake. I ended up I couldn't taste anything, so I ended up drinking those because they were like kind of milky and easy to drink. You're supposed to inject them, but I ended up drinking them, and I had so many of them. I mean, my God, I had a box of them to the ceiling. So I drank those for months because it was the only nutrition I could really get in my body, and I really didn't have an appetite at all for anything. I mean, I had no desire to eat, no taste, no appetite. So I lost 40 pounds. So I went from around 200 pounds down to about 160. And that's a scary weight for me. I haven't seen 160 since maybe high school. And I was really thin, just like, and I was cold. I had no insulation, and it was the middle of winter, and I was just always cold, no matter how high we turned the heat up. And I felt like this is it. I'm really gonna die. That's how I felt. Um, but slowly I was able to recover from this infection, and that started to get things kind of going for me where mentally I felt like, you know, okay, this is getting smaller. I can start to taste things a little bit more. I started introducing more food, soupy food, um, a lot of chocolate milk because I'm a big chocolate fit. Um, and then the one thing that really helped me, I remember I had this feeding tube. Okay, so I had this feeding tube for 30 days after surgery. So the one thing was, um, taking food into my mouth and chewing it. I had no mechanical muscle anymore. I had no mechanics. I couldn't chew. And the other problem is I had a terrible trismus. The radiation really clamped it down. Like I couldn't get one finger into my mouth. I was just like that. It was awful. So food was going in like little tiny pieces. So I'm gonna call this thing out. So they gave me this freaking contraption. I'm sure some of you have this thing, the terabyte system, and I started working on it. And now, so every day doing this whole thing, um, I'm able to get a whole finger in my mouth plus a little bit of room. And every day I work on that. Trismus still sucks. It's the worst thing ever. I remember the days just biting into a huge hamburger or something, and just eating it. Now it's like I don't even order it. I just, everything has to be in small little bites. Um, so again, some things are going to change for us, and this is where the mental willpower has to kind of come in. I think, and this is the one message I'm going to leave you with, is you have to reset your brain on what a new tolerance level, a new baseline is, because I'm in discomfort all the time. I'm in constant discomfort, but I'm kind of teaching my brain that this is new normal. Like, so not to be over indexing on, oh my God, I'm in so much pain. I need to go for the oxy. I need to go for the gabapentin or whatever drug, they put you on, or ibuprofen or whatever. In that, okay, I'm a little uncomfortable, but it's just a new normal. And if I reset my brain on that, then I can tolerate it. And that's what I've been doing, because I was living on oxycodone. I mean, huge doses, like 70, 80 milligrams a day. I mean, I would pop 10 milligrams for breakfast and have another one an hour later, another one an hour later, because I was in so much pain. And that really did help, though. It helped me get through a tough period in my life. And I'm still going through it. I'm on a mission to fix this fistula. I'm talking to every doctor in Boston and Cleveland Clinic and Dana-Farber at Mass General Hospital and guys in New York at Northwell Hospital and at uh, uh, another major hospital in New York City that everybody knows. But anyway, man, I'm on a mission. It's a complicated thing because it's hard to fix, and because it's in a radiated area. So that's something that I'm just kind of waiting on. I'm wearing this awful obturator just to get me through. Hopefully that's enough for life, but there are some other options. You can do a temporary one that can actually insert it into your mouth. I might try that. It's like you're not supposed to feel it, but every 6 months you have to change it out, like an oil change, or even more frequently. So I'm throwing a lot at everybody right now because I feel like a lot of the questions that I see on the channel, and they're just repetitive. They're the same old thing. It's like we're all trying to encourage everybody, but I'm going to make this video with step by step everything I did from the day of surgery to a year later, and all the things that I'm going through and everything I did to bring myself back, including, and then this is mostly for males, not for females, but mostly for males. I've also looked into testosterone, low dose therapy, because I completely lost my mojo. I lost my strength. I lost my manhood, my athleticism, my everything about me was completely garbage. And it turned out that I did have like a low T, which you should get checked. Ask your doctor, say, oh, you're doing a workup for my blood panel. Can you check your thyroid? Also, make sure that doesn't get compromised, because your immune system can attack your thyroid and give you all kinds of other problems. But also ask them to do a workup on your testosterone. If you're male, just say, hey, just can run a test on it. It's a simple blood test. They can add it. There's no extra. They're already testing your blood. Just add it to the thing. Add it to the panel. And do that every 3 months. Just see where you are. And I've been doing that. And it's like I've kind of gotten myself back to normal ranges, and I'm feeling much better. And the one thing I will say is that I've lost strength in my shoulder. So my left shoulder, they cut my spinal accessory nerve, or they hit it somehow. And when they hit it, you lose your mobility in the shoulder. Maybe some of you have that, but your rotation and your strength in the shoulder completely is like altered. And on top of that car accident, snapped my infraspinatus and my supraspinatus. So those came completely off, and it's unrepairable because it's like noodles. Like you can't fix spaghetti. So whatever. So now my shoulder's compromised, which I'm also rehabbing. So that's part of the message is that, so what do you do? So you should be doing physical therapy anyway. Everybody should be exercising, and any exercise helps your body. Your body needs the hormones. You need the muscles to get going. So I chose yoga because I just couldn't go to the gym and lift any weights, but yoga has really saved my life in a lot of ways. It's like, the body can do amazing things. I can't believe how much flexibility I've gotten over the last 6 months of doing it. And by the way, that was a friend who brought me in. He actually said, when you're ready, I want to take you to this yoga class. And I had never done yoga in my life, maybe once, and I was like, it wasn't for me. I was more of like a weights and gym guy, I'm surfing and all that. And, but this is like amazing for the mind and body. And I do it 5 days a week now. I get up early, so I highly encourage people, just find a simple, gentle class. You don't have to do power yoga and all these other kind of, people turn yoga into aerobics sometimes, but there are these very gentle movements, and you hold your postures and give you time and fluidity to move through these different moves, and it will strengthen you, and it will give you a place, an outlet for your mind, and help you. I'll tell you this, I was in so much pain even going to these when I first started, but for some reason during the sessions, during the holding my posture or in this hot yoga, I forgot about all of it. All of it. It was just like my neck all of a sudden wasn't stiff, or I wasn't thinking about it, or this trismus issue and all this fistula shit and all these things were just not, I was not thinking about them. It was like very peaceful. Of course, an hour later, after I get home, I'm feeling good, but those things now start to creep up on you. But wouldn't it be great if I told you for an hour and a half a day, all of your symptoms could just somehow just be alleviated. And I'm telling you, yoga can do that. At least it does for me. So, that's it. I talked for a lot. This is the first video. I'm gonna get something where I show you all of this in a more graphical presentation. I'll show you the images, the food that I ate, the protein shakes, the blood counts, the tests, full transparency. I appreciate everyone's time. Stay safe. Talk soon.